Assalamu alaikum. How are you? Thank you so much all for waiting patiently. I know you all are probably super tired by now. It's the end of the day. And so I'm going to try to make it as exciting as possible. While the one thing that you can be sure is that I'm going to start from very, very basics. So you'll understand everything that's going on. Um, you know, you've been doing all these Maui courses and all the stuff that you've been doing with Maui. Uh, this is going to start from absolute basics. So even if you weren't paying attention to anything, or if you were busy helping out someone, this is going to be a lot easier and a lot more chill. So let me share my screen for a second. All right. And let me get my presentation here. This is going to be a very, very exciting talk. Like, you guys are going to see some really cool stuff. You guys are going to learn a lot of really interesting things. So, this is the talk to be at. Sharing screen, share screen. And I'm going to briefly show what I have over here. Okay, I think you all are able to see my screen now. And slideshow. So we're going to talk about Internet of Things in practice with .NET MAUI. So, and we're going to explore the absolute basics. So what is IoT? What are the different pieces? I'm going to start off with who I am. So I'm Saamer Mansoor. I am from Maqbuza, Kashmir, and I currently live in Detroit. But how did I get to doing all of this stuff? What was my journey like? You know, my journey started off in university. I had a friend, his name was Omar. He was always really smart, and he was willing to teach me. I was willing to learn, and he taught me about Arduinos. And from there, I graduated university as a mechanical engineer, but I did like a short course in I actually left mechanical engineering. So I worked, for a year, and I was doing really well as a mechanical engineer, but I wanted to do all these engineering competitions and, build these really cool things. And in order to do that, I needed to know more about computer science. So I knew about robotics, but I wanted to be able to control these robots with my phone. And and so I left my job and I took a huge pay cut, and I essentially got into a company where they were using Xamarin for mobile app development. It was a huge win for me. It was a huge win for them. I was really excited to learn, and I was able to pick up all the skills needed. And then, long story short, I've lived in so many different cities now, probably six different cities in the past 12 years. And now I'm finally in Detroit, and I get to pass by 8 Mile. I don't know if any of you know Eminem's 8 Mile Road. So I get to pass that every day, from work to home, home to work. And it is pretty dangerous, the 8 Mile Road. so I do not recommend going to the 8 Mile Road. I filled my gas there recently, and I was like, this is an interesting place. But yeah, that's a little bit about me, and this is the agenda for today. We're gonna learn a little bit basics of Maui, and then we're gonna learn about the basics, absolute basics of electronics, and then we're gonna see how to control those IoT electronics from a mobile app, specifically the Maui app. And then we're going to learn how to make it more complex and use a Raspberry Pi and use other electronic devices. So, even if some of this does not make sense right now, this is going to be a really good resource. You can get the URL from any of the volunteers over there. And, you know, just watch it again and see what I've done, because this took me a lot of time to figure out. But now that I figured it out, I'm sharing it with all of you, and you know, it'll be easy for you all to get started with this. So MAUI Basics, you know, I'm just going to go through it in 2 minutes. You know, even if you have no mobile development, this should make sense to you. No mobile development experience. So, you know, you hear a lot about hybrid and cross-platform development for mobile. There's native, which everyone agrees is like Swift or Objective-C, and then there's Java or Kotlin is considered native. But then there's this middle ground of hybrid and cross-platform mobile app development, but there's no proper consensus on what is the definition. So usually hybrid apps are considered to be developed using more than one language or technology. But I mean, if you look at Xamarin, it uses XAML and C#. But what I use the term for, I use hybrid for stuff like Cordova, PhoneGap, things that look terrible. You know, Angular, things that are basically just web code. They aren't native code. They aren't even compiled to native code. But React Native, Flutter, Xamarin, they're all what everyone considers to be cross-platform mobile app development. And Xamarin is native because you have native API access. So if you're using Bluetooth, it actually uses the device Bluetooth. It doesn't come up with its own libraries. And you see a lot of the user interfaces are native, and then you have native performance. So it's, you know, that's why I consider it to be a cross-platform mobile app development framework. So what does that evolution look like of MAUI? Like, there's several iterations before, but the production iterations of MAUI started with something called Xamarin Native. So if you see on the left, what you had to do back then, back in many years ago, you had a shared C# backend, and then you would code the UI in C#, but you would have to do it separately in iOS in something called a view controller. You would have to deal with navigation, and all that was very difficult to do. And there's actually quite a few people who are really good at Xamarin Native. But there's no new tutorials. I think the most recent tutorial on Xamarin Native was probably one that I created, so you can just go to YouTube and search Xamarin Native, because I still do Xamarin Native for some projects. And then you would have to do the Android UI using fragments and activities using C#. So it was very difficult, super huge learning curve. And which is also why they moved away from it, and they created a shared UI code, and slowly they increased the number of supported platforms, and now, as we will see today, it just supports macOS, iOS, Android, and Windows, and it all looks really good, and you don't have to worry about any of this stuff. You just have to worry about the app UI. It does everything else for you, so it's pretty awesome. So getting started is super simple. You just go to the search Visual Studio and just download it on your computer, you know. So that's one step. If you haven't done it already, download Visual Studio now, like don't wait. And, you know, after installing, you just open it, and we're going to go through these steps together. You just have to create a new template, put your app name, create, and hit play. That's it. That's your first app. You know, it's super simple. Don't wait. Do it now. Download it and just press the play button. Build your first mobile app. You know, you need to get to 100 mobile apps before you can get to a really good one. So that's why you better get started with the first one now. You're never going to reach the 100th one otherwise. Then, so the one thing that you have to remember, you know, what are, like, when you look at it, like, what are we seeing? So the order that you have to remember is pages, layouts, and views. So the views cannot just directly go on the page. They have to go inside a layout. And whenever you go from one screen to the other, you're basically going through pages. That's what Xamarin calls them. Like I believe so. React Native calls them screens, and then native iOS calls them view controllers. Android calls them fragments, but they're all the same thing. They're natively at the bottom, they're all the same thing. They just call them different names. So yeah, pages, and then inside that you can have multiple layouts, as you can see over here. You can have a stack layout, you can have grid, make it look all fancy, and inside that you have your views, which is your entry where people type in username and password, labels, buttons, all that stuff. It's pretty easy to get started with. And then if you don't want to use XAML, because a lot of people are like, oh, why should we use XAML? You can just use C#. And today I'm just going to use C# actually to make your UI and to set all your logic. So it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So let me just demo really quick. So over here, what we're going to do is we're going to create a brand new. So I'm going to code live. They say never do live coding, but we're going to do some live coding today. So I'm going to quit this. So remember what I said. Get started today. So I'm going to open Visual Studio, which I installed already. And from a blank installation, I'm going to say new, and I'm going to create go to multi-platform app, .NET MAUI app, and just say continue. This is the only option, so you don't have to think too much about it. And I'm just going to say, where's my chai? And we're going to get to why I chose that name in a little bit. Okay, and this is related to the IoT project, so that's coming. Create. So it took barely any time at all, and over here I'm just going to select an iPhone simulator. I'm going to hit play. So what do you look at over here? What am I looking at? What should I be looking out for? When you come over here, compared to what it was before, there's only one project. So there's this solution. This is the Solution Explorer window where you see what your solution looks like. And then there's one project under that solution, and that contains everything. So if you go to platforms, you'll see all the different platforms that are supported. But you don't have to worry about that. The only thing you have to worry about is this main page.xaml and main page.xaml.cs. That's the only thing that we're going to work on today. Okay? And so if I press the play button, so in a few seconds it's going to complete building. Just because this is a brand new installation, that's why it's going to take a little more time. But you can see when you tap on this, you can see the output. So it's saying, oh, build started. So remember what I said, pages, layouts, and views. So this over here is your page. Inside your page is a layout, and inside that layout is another layout. Actually, remember how I said you cannot have a page inside a page, but you can have layouts inside a layout. And then inside the layout you have your views. See that? And the good thing about .NET MAUI, and I'm just going to click the button so it shows you what that app looks like. And I'm just going to say hello Lahore, and I'm going to hit save. And if you see over here, it already updated to hello Lahore. So it's a pretty quick dev lifecycle, so you don't have to stop and start every single time. You used to have to do it, but it's awesome that we don't have to do it right now. And then this is the XAML, which a lot of people use for your mobile UI updates, and this is the XAML.cs, which is what people use to update the logic, the code behind. So main page is the name of the file. It is a constructor, so everything inside it gets called first, obviously. Initialize component is what allows the XAML to be loaded. So if you don't call that, it's not going to call any of this UI. And then over here, if you notice, there's the on counter clicked. it basically comes from here. So there's a clicked function on the button that, calls this function in its code behind. The thing that I want to point out is that if you're using Windows and you make changes to the functions, you don't have to refresh, you don't have to stop and start again in order for the logic to come over here. So it's a good thing that you can test. If you copy and paste this twice, it should say clicked 6 times, clicked 8 times, so it should hop by 2, but it doesn't do it on the Mac yet. But on Windows, it actually also checks changes inside your function. So it's like basically hot reload for both C# and XAML. So it's pretty powerful. Anyway, let's see let's ask the crew for does anyone have a favorite actress? Like what's someone shout out the name of a favorite actress, and then Akash, you can share with me what people are shouting. This is for our next demo. Akash, can you ask people what their favorite actress, or you tell me, Akash, what's your favorite actress? It has to be Pakistani actress, so. I can hear something. Huh?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm asking, I can't tell, as I told, my wife is seeing this presentation, will kill me.
Okay, what's your wife's favorite actress? Maybe that is acceptable to her, huh?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay. I'll choose for you. Okay. Let's say Mahira Khan. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So the good thing about mobile app development is that the creativity lies in your hands. So now that you know what it looks like to create a mobile app, you can just be creative yourself. You can create a mobile app for your wife, for your parents, just like be creative and think about what you can actually create. So over here, what I did is I changed up the code so that the constructor does not have initialized component. You see this? I commented this out. And instead, I put in my own UI using C#. And all this code is going to be available to everyone, so don't worry about it. I'll share the GitHub link. But essentially, I just updated it, and now it's 53 lines of code. So I'm going to stop, and I'm going to start using this code. Let's see, is there any errors? I just ran this code. Oh yeah. Let me just change it up a bit. And come on. Okay, yeah, so this app, we made a few changes and we're trying to be creative. If you all remember, there used to be those channels that you used to be able to call, and they would play music. You could either text them or call them, and they would play music, and then you would put in someone else's name, and it would give you a percentage. Are you guys eligible to match or not? So we kind of created that similar thing, but using a mobile app, using MAUI. So we're essentially checking for Akash to see if Mahira Khan likes Akash. Okay, so we're gonna put in her name. We're gonna press this button. Oh no, sorry Akash, it doesn't seem like she's into you. We're gonna try again. Okay, let's see, maybe she might change her mind. Oh no, it's saying you can stop already. All right, let's click again. It's not working. What? Oh, clicking isn't going to help, Akash, it doesn't seem like clicking is going to help. She doesn't like you. So it's good. Your wife is lucky. Okay. So that's just basics of Xamarin. We're going to move on to the next part, where I'm going to teach you some of the basics of electronics. So there's microcontrollers and there's microprocessors. Here what I have right now is a microcontroller. You can kind of see, and there's a little device and there's some light, and this is just power. So this is not connected to my computer by any chance. So what you see on the right is just C++ code. So most of these microelectronics you have to code using C++. You can't use C# or C. You could, you can find some devices that use Python, but like for the most part, C++ is like the coding language for these devices. But it's pretty easy. If you look on the right, it looks just like C#, and for the most part, for most embedded programming, there'll be a setup. There'll be a setup function which gets run only once as soon as the device is turned on, and then there's a loop function that gets called multiple times in a second. So it just keeps looping. Keeps running that all the time. That's how an electronics device generally works. And then when you have all these cables, you kind of wonder, okay, what is the ground? What is black? Like, what is, remember black and red, and everyone's like, oh my God, don't touch the black wire. But like, what is this stuff? So for the most part, when there's alternating current is what you get from the wall, and then there's direct current, which you get from batteries, from a USB cable. So for direct current, it's the ground is black and it is the negative side. So there's negative and positive for battery. So essentially the negative side is ground or black. This is like, I'm condensing years of electrical engineering into like into like 5 minutes of course. So this is all you need to know in order to understand this and in order to get started. So the good thing about these devices is that these are, the cable, when you get it from the USB, it's only 5 volts usually, or 3.3 volts. And it's not enough voltage in order to get an electric shock. So you can like touch this for days. You're not going to get an electric shock, even unless it's 30 volts, you're totally fine. So that's why car batteries are 12 volts. So that people don't get electric shocks essentially. So it's super safe at 5 volts. And then also just remember, you see there's an LED. Every LED has 2 legs. The shorter end is the negative leg, and if it just doesn't work, you have to flip it over. LEDs are pretty cool, but yeah, we'll talk about it in a little bit. So the tool that I'm using, I'll be able to code through the browser, but if you're using an Arduino, you can purchase it in Pakistan. I think they're unavailable in Pakistan right now. Everyone's jumping on it. You should jump on it too. This is some really exciting stuff, but I think you can also purchase it from China and get it shipped. But essentially an Arduino Uno is pretty good. Or Node ESP32. There's so many of these that are really, really good that you can just purchase, and they're super cheap. Like I think the Node ESP32 is like 300 Pakistani rupees, like you don't even get food for that much. Like I don't know if they have kebabs for that much, Anyway, so yeah, C++, then what I'm currently using is called a particle. So the particle is like 5 times as expensive as ESP32, so it's still pretty cheap, but it gives me access to code through the browser. It gives me access to these particle functions, variables, and events. And the only thing that I have to keep in mind is that I have to create a particle token, and in order to do that, I do the particle token create. So we'll see if we need to do it, because I did it last night, so maybe the token might not have expired, but we'll see that. In case it doesn't work, you just remind me that it's the particle token. So what do you see on this? So you basically see this plastic thing. It's called a breadboard. Even though it's not made of bread, they call it a breadboard. Engineers, when you give them the chance to name things and market things, they just like screw it up. Yeah, but they call it the breadboard, and it allows you to power this whole thing up, in a safe way and be able to use this in a different way. So the light is obviously called an LED. This device, which has power connected to it, is called a microcontroller, obviously. And this over here is a resistor. See this little shiny, neat thing? And so resistors, why are we using a resistor? Because LEDs, they're so tiny that if you put power to them, even 5 volts that you use to power your phone, it will actually blow up. So you have to reduce the voltage or reduce the load, and you do that using a resistor. So, and this is the flow direction. If you're interested, the power goes from the ground, okay, and it goes using this breadboard. You see this negative it vertically passes through to this resistor, and this resistor takes it over here, and then it horizontally passes it. So the middle section has horizontal rows, and the outer section has vertical columns. So anyway, it goes from here, goes there, and then it goes to D6 or D7. So we're going to use D7 today. And these are the on and off states. So when I'm doing my thing, you'll be able to see the light. There are 2 lights right now. There's this blue light and this white light. They will go on and off, okay? So you'll kind of be able to see that. Now, the good thing with Particle is that you have cloud access already, but you can set this up using AWS, using Azure IoT Hub. Like there's so many different tools that you can use there. We don't have to do any of it because it already is out of the box. But I'm going to use something called CodePen, which is basically just a web page generator. Very, very useful. And we're just going to turn it on and off using that. It's just a post call essentially. So let's see. So this is CodePen. This is just like 10 lines of code over here in order to build this out. And it says, tell your device what to do. So, it's already on, so I'm going to turn it off. See, this is not connected. This is just like a random website. And I said, turn it off, and it turned it off. See that? It's so instantaneous. You might have missed it. So I'm going to turn it on now. Look at this light and look at that. Turn the LED on. Get it closer. Do it. See that? It turned on. Isn't that so cool? So now we're going to be able to use a similar concept on the mobile app. Go back. So it seems like if you look over here, there's a device ID that I had to put in, which is the device ID of this device. And there's this access token, which I generated last night, which seems to still work. So that's amazing. So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually think about how we can use the same concept to do other things. Like it's such a simple concept, super, super simple. Let's see how we can actually use it for other stuff. So I'm just going to remove this code. If you look at this code, which we did to check out to see if Maya Khan likes Akash, it's basically a switch statement. As soon as you tap the button, it checks the counter, does the switch statement, and just updates the label. You see? Super simple stuff. Like you can do this like for days. You can prank your friends. In 20 seconds, you can just write some code and amaze people. Amaze your employer. Like, oh, look what I created in 20 seconds. And they're like, whoa, mind blown. They don't know that it's just like 40 lines of code that you copied from me. Okay, so definitely play around with it. Now I'm going to put in the next. I'm going to show how we use this on the mobile app. So here. So what you can do, namespace using JSON. Okay. So in order for this to work, we have to use an external library because we're parsing JSON. So, this is a neat, very, very powerful tool. So you just right click on your project, you say manage NuGet packages, and you just, tap on this and on Newtonsoft.json, which is the most popular JSON library for parsing, requests and responses from APIs. And you just hit add, and it'll just go ahead and add that. You see that squiggly line went away. So similarly, you can use these external packages for so many things, and there's so many freely available, which is like the beauty of computer science. You can do like an NFC, near field communication package. You can do a Bluetooth package, all these amazing tools that are available to Xamarin, to MAUI. And so I just basically copied and pasted the code. There's a few more lines over here. There's like 200 lines, but I'm just going to stop and start. So the name of this app is Where's My Chai? Wait, let's see. Did it work? Oh, I think I pasted it twice. Yeah, let's see. Play. Yeah. So a lot of times, especially like in that conference, for example, you want to get chai, but the chai is over. Because the last person to come and drink the chai and finish it, he forgot to let them know, or he was just being lazy and didn't let the people know that the chai is over. And so the person who comes after him, he's like, hey, where's the chai? So we created this little app using this super simple concept to figure out if chai is available. And you can do that with, you can create a mobile app for everyone to be able to track, whether there is chai. So they don't have to get up from their seat, go all the way, walk to the chai, which is like 5 feet away. But it's okay, 5 feet is too much. And they just basically check to see if chai is available. So it says, welcome to the world's first essential tea notifier app. So it helps you find if tea is available or not. Right now, the status is unknown. So essentially, as soon as someone comes to refill the chai, they just have to press one button on their mobile app and it says the tea is here. Now everyone, when they open their app, they check the status, it'll say, oh, the tea is available. And then, the last person to finish the chai, now they can be responsible and they can press this button and say the tea is gone. So now everyone knows that the tea is gone, and then you can send a push notification so everyone is aware that, hey, there's a refill. So we're going to make small changes to this as well. So you see the UI doesn't look that great. I'm just going to change this, add some margin to the buttons, and I'm going to hit save, stop, and start. And now if you look over here, I think I'm running out of time, but I'm going to finish up super quick. So like, you just have to be really creative with these ideas. Like, it's all in your hands. This stuff is doable. It's very easy to do. You just have to be very creative, and you can come up with your own ideas. So yeah, notice how, the UI looks a lot better because I just changed one property. And here, this is the actual device. You can create a little box on top of it. You can create it using like cardboard box, and people don't get to see everything else, that it's so simple. They just see the light, and you can write anything you want on it. So I'm going to hit full. See, the light is on so people can come and drink the chai. Empty, everyone knows that the chai is over. They don't have to walk 5 steps to see that, there's no chai available. Okay. So super, super simple to do. All I did was essentially change the controls. So I used buttons and labels, and then I made an API call, a post API call, to turn it on, turn it off. Very, very easy to do. I'll share all the code so you'll have it. But yeah, that's the main thing. So what can you do with this? Now, with these devices, you can create something called webhooks. And webhooks is what makes it super powerful. There's these tools called if this then that, for example, where you can, if something happens, like if there's a function that's triggered like if someone says, oh, there's no tea, you can make it send an email to someone. So now people received a text message. Oh, the tea's over. You know, you can turn the AC down, you know? So it essentially connects it to the Internet of Things. So it becomes super powerful. So there are these smart LED bulbs that you can purchase. So as soon as the tea is gone, the LED bulb in my home, so the tea in Lahore, in some conference room there, is over, and now the light in my home in Detroit goes on and off, and so I'm aware of it. Like the opportunities are endless, and like you can just be super creative of how you want to do it, you know. And honestly, the more absurd it is, like the more crazy you create the combination, the more popular it'll become. Like if you put it on social media, they'll be like, whoa, you know. And in your mind, you're just like, hey, I was just being stupid about it, but people seem to love it so much. So how did I use it? So I used to live in Toronto for about 2 years, I think. And Toronto is super expensive. Toronto, Canada, very expensive. And the landlord, so in order to live there, like for me, I had to live in a basement. You know, it was like there's a house, and inside the house there was a basement that they had just done, and it was like a very, very old house. But anyway, the AC was controlled by the lady upstairs, and she had a dog who is supposed to live in cold climates, like it's a Siberian Husky that's supposed to live in Siberia, which is like extremely cold. So she used to keep the temperature very, very cold. And so what I used to keep telling them, hey, increase the temperature, increase the temperature. They wouldn't know, like that it's cold. So what I did, I used this little device, and I used something called a temperature humidity sensor, which is like, again, 100 rupees. It's super, super cheap. This stuff is so old, which is why it's super cheap. And I just connected them together, three cables, just connected them. And I used the if this and that, and I created a webhook to a Google Sheet. So every 5 minutes, it would, graph this out throughout the day. And so, what ended up being is that it was lower than the allowed minimum by law. And so as soon as I took a screenshot and sent it to the landlord, she immediately, like, I think it was like in 2 hours, she sent me a heater. She's like, I'm so sorry, here's the heater, it's extremely cold. So yeah, like, you can be so creative with these things. I didn't have to argue or fight or anything. I just created this scientific calculations, made a graph, and it worked for me. So you can do this stuff for like a lot of really cool things. I'm going to also show you how to actually, recently I was looking into this little thing over here. It's a GPS sensor. This is, again, probably 500 Pakistani rupees that you can purchase from China, and it gives you GPS coordinates. So you can get live coordinates, so it communicates with the satellite, so it gets the satellite signals. It's amazing how little these things are. And it'll tell you like how your location has changed, and it's accurate up to 5 meters, so it's extremely accurate. And it uses like all the GPS navigation satellites, so not just the US ones. It's pretty complex, but amazing what you can do with these things. And so a client needed some work to be done with GPS and Xamarin, using these little devices. And so I was able to just say, yeah, I can do it. So it's just like, just put your fingers in it, understand what's going on, so you can pick projects that will expand your experience. You become super valuable. So I'm almost the end. I'm just going to talk about Raspberry Pis for a second. And, there's not much to do over here, but just, to learn. So what is a Raspberry Pi? You might have heard about it. They're essentially a microprocessor. Remember how I told you this is a microcontroller? So Raspberry Pi is a microprocessor. So what is the difference? Microprocessors run multiple applications. Microcontrollers usually do only one function. So the loop only does one functionality. Microprocessors are basically like your computers. Your computers are microprocessors. So Raspberry Pis are essentially computers. The difference is that you can code it with Python. You don't have to. You can use C++ there too. There's HDMI, Wi-Fi, USB. You do need an SD card. How do you get started? As soon as you purchase a Raspberry Pi, it costs, it's basically the cheapest computer you can ever buy. So if you, have been thinking about buying one, just go ahead and buy it. It's super cheap. Once you buy it, you just need to get an SD card. You go to their website, download for whatever Mac OS or Windows, and then you download this imager essentially, and you put that image on the SD card, and you write the OS essentially on this little SD card. And I choose the Raspberry Pi OS, which is, essentially Raspbian. That's what it's called. Once you do that, you have a computer, it's ready. And then you just have to, follow these commands and get Particle on, you can get Particle on this Raspberry Pi. And by the way, if there are any questions, I can't see that little thing, just let me know or just text me and I'll answer. But compared to what we had before, it looked like there were so many pins on this one and it looks a lot more complicated, but really what you need to do is you just need to go to something called a pinout diagram. So if you get any microcontroller, just ask for the pinout diagram and you instantly look smarter. They'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, this guy knows what he's doing. He's asking for the pinout diagram. All right, sure. So once you get the pinout diagram, which is basically this on the left, you just have to change the little pins. So from the microcontroller, you just look for these pins on the Raspberry Pi. So if you see over here, it says D0 and D1. So pin number 7 and 11. So that's how you know, okay, which one to connect it with. And then, you leave these other cables the same. You don't have to touch anything else. All you need to touch is the ground, the digital cables. That's it. Super simple. And it will essentially start working with your Raspberry Pi also. So same knowledge applied over there as well. Very, very easy. Get started. So what I did, knowing all of this stuff, there was one client, he was like, hey, I want to build this really cool thing. And I was like, yeah, I can do it. And so in order, I didn't build what he said, but I created a POC or a proof of concept. I was like, look, I built this thing, which is super similar, but it's not the product itself. And so as soon as he saw me building this, he was like, yeah, this Saamer knows this thing. He knows exactly how to build it. He knows exactly what not to do. He's not just a mobile app developer, And so what I ended up creating is a phone-controlled hand sanitizer dispenser. So you know how we had to use hand sanitizer all the time for COVID? So what I did is I just hooked up a power supply, which converts your AC current from the wall to DC current, so that it's manageable and it doesn't blow up everything. So it's essentially those little things, but it's just a bigger form, so you can change what voltage you want. So it converts the 110 or 220 volts from the power over to 5 volts. So it makes it extremely small and it makes it direct current. So that's why these electronics are doing over here. I would recommend be very careful, especially with the stuff at home. When you're connecting it to power, I was extremely scared the first time I did it, but I did it somehow. But be very careful at home. But essentially, these power supplies. You just connect it to the right cables, and then it converts it to like a very little power. And then you can use that to use something called a relay. So I'm going to show a bigger picture in over here. So this is the relay that essentially is a switch that you can control with electricity. And you just connect that to your Raspberry Pi, and it controls whether or not the electricity goes to the pump. So every time you press a button on your MAUI app, it communicates to the Raspberry Pi to turn on or turn off the switch of the motor of the pump, and then it will give out the it'll give out the hand sanitizer. But yeah, that's the basics of it. And yeah, does anyone have any questions? And so there's basically I was able to build with the knowledge that I had. And this is me. You can search. I have a bunch of apps in the App Store. I've done a ton for mostly do stuff for companies, but I've some apps of my own on the App Store. If you're interested, just I guess you can search for like Be Aware. There was an app that I built for the deaf, which got featured by Apple. And then there's a another app called Stairmaster Climber, which is like an iPhone app for
Stairs.
for climbing stairs. But yeah, that's basically me. Thank you so much for listening. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Akash, what does it look like out there?
Hi, sir. I have a question.
Yeah.
Basically,
for
mobile application.
MAUI.
Question is how you create that code with this microcontroller.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So going back, so how does the code interact with the microcontroller? So the microcontroller is connected to the internet. So you definitely have to connect it to the internet, and then you have to use a tool to where you essentially can communicate with the ports of this. So if you look at the code over here, let me show you. So this is the CLI over here. So there's something called a particle function. So remember, there's a setup and there's a loop. So there's a particle function that whenever there's an API call made to this board, so whenever it hits the cloud, and whenever there's an API call made, it will call this function, okay, which basically toggles the LED. And so this is what the mobile app or the website was doing. It was changing, doing the post API call, and it was passing in this value. And here is where it says digital write high or digital write low. So the LED, which is on pin number D7, so D7 on your board, you can see it says A1, A2, A3, D1, D2, D3. So it'll say D7. And whenever you pass in high to D7, it basically turns that light on. When you pass in low, which basically ones and zeros. So digital signals are just ones and zeros. So it's either on or it's off. So if you pass in low, it just turns off. Pass in high. So essentially, whenever you make an API call, it calls this function, and this function just calls these few lines of code. And that's how you communicate with the microcontroller from the internet. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. I have another question. Where you posted that code, that .NET MAUI code?
So the .NET MAUI code, actually that's a great question. So let's do it right now. Here. Let me post that code right now for you. So this is the code. This is the stuff over here. And I go to GitHub desktop. Oh, here. Let me move the files. I thought I'd put it, but basically if you go to my profile on GitHub, so github.com/SaamerM, and it's on my last, on the last slide, you'll be able to see, my repositories. Actually, yeah, there we go. So there's Where's My Kombucha has some of the code, but that one is for Xamarin, this one is for MAUI. So I'm just going to upload the code right now so that you have it, and it will be in the, you'll be able to see it'll be the .NET Conf 2022-MAUI-IoT branch repository on my profile. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Awesome question. Thank you. Just pushing it right now. But yeah, any other questions? And feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, on LinkedIn. I get so many messages all the time from people, and I try my best to always respond. I think I spoke with Akash like so long ago, and we've been keeping in touch this way. I would love to learn about like what you create. Like you can create games. There's this one that I created using Xamarin called Number Bomb. It's available on the Play Store and the App Store. It's pretty simple. It'll just help you get ideas of what you can build. It's free. But yeah, like just be creative and like start building stuff and share it with me. Tell me, what you've done. I would love to learn what you've created with the stuff that you learn. Yep. Thank you guys. Like any other questions, anyone? All right, if there's no questions, I will hand it back over to you. Does that sound good, Akash? Stop screen. Oh wait, it seems like there's another question. Oh wait, what is the next question? Let's see. Waiting. Oh, there's a voice issue. Okay, let me mute. My speaker is on. What you can do is maybe you can write the question in the chat for me as well.
Hello, can you hear me?
हाँ आवाज आ रही है.
Okay, so so Smir, you present very well and easily, and I am interested in with the Arduino. So as you registered with the particle and creating token and accessing that, so can I use the same for the Arduino?
So
How
you
you can create the tokens and connect the Wi-Fi device on that? So I did see that part in your presentation.
Yes. Okay. So you cannot do use particle with Arduino.
No, I want to and controller rather than
Yeah.
particle. I used to Arduino by program. I need to register register token for that. So how you register token for and get that from the Pout website, and you use that in your code. So I need to do that thing. But I basically in your presentation that how the token is generated and how the Wi-Fi is connected with your controller. The Wi-Fi device is missed in that part. So I'm interested in that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Okay, so obviously, you have to have a device that has Wi-Fi. So Arduino Uno does not have Wi-Fi, but Particle does. Like this Particle device has Wi-Fi. You can get some Particle devices that have data. So you purchase it once for $50, which is just convert that. But forever you can use the data on that. You don't have to pay every month to these carriers. It will work anywhere in the world, or at least more than 100 countries, for free. But Particle has an app called Particle, which helps you set up the Wi-Fi. So it connects to the Wi-Fi network anywhere that you go. It makes it very easy to do it. So when you purchase a device like ESP32, for example, is a cheap device that is like Arduino, that has Wi-Fi. ESP32, ESP8266, they're super, super cheap. There's $4, $3 devices. Cheaper than biryani, or plow, as you guys call it. But essentially you set it up. So you set up the Wi-Fi, and then, so you remember how I did the token create? So the token create works for Particle because it has access to the cloud, but Arduino does not have access to the cloud. So you can purchase a Raspberry Pi and you can connect that to the Particle cloud. Or if you have ASP80, any device any microcontroller that has Wi-Fi, you have to create the cloud service for that device. So it's a lot more complicated. You'd have to use something like Azure IoT Hub and all these other device tools that are out there. So the simplest way is just to purchase this, ask them to ship it to you. If they don't ship it to you, just let me know. I'll ship it over to you. And it already has all of that set up. But yeah, like, you can only create those tokens, or you can only make those API calls if you have this infrastructure set up. And so Particle just makes that infrastructure, sets it up for you. There's so many websites like ThinkSpeak and all this other stuff that have directions on how to do it for ESP8266 and ESP32. But yeah, just like message me on LinkedIn and I can share more details, and we can do it together for sure. We can collaborate on that as a team. Thank you so much for listening. It was a pleasure. I'm so glad you guys, I'm so happy to meet all of you. And I'm so excited that you guys had questions. That means, it's kind of interesting. But yeah, feel free to watch this video and learn it all again, or ask me questions. I'm super happy to help out.